How much visceral fat do I want to have? And I usually respond, well, how much cancer do you want to have? Fat around their rectum and fat in their butt. I'm just like, this is you in diapers. There's no restriction in my life. I'm 60 years old. I can climb a tree like an 8-year-old. I'm playing soccer at the age of 63. I do all these exceptional things.
Here's what nobody tells you about getting your blood work back. You're 47. You did the physical. Your doctor says everything's normal. And you walk out to your car and you know something's off. The energy's not there. That waistline crept up even though the scale barely moved. You don't feel like the guy you were at 35. And the paper says you're fine. Here's the thing. You're not crazy. You're just being measured with the wrong ruler. Normal is just the average of a population that's overweight, inflamed, and out of shape. Being told you're normal only means you're not sick enough for a prescription yet. And that's not healthcare. They're playing sick care. The goal of that game is to keep you from dying. Your goal is to perform. That's two different sports. I'm Zach Armstrong, retired Naval Commander and F-18 fighter pilot turned performance coach. And this is no hype, just standards. My guest today has spent his career measuring what standard labs can't see. The fact packed around your organs, your heart, and inside your muscle. Dr. Sean O'Mara is a retired U.S. Army colonel and a former emergency medicine physician who now reverses that damage without a prescription pad. He reached out to come on, and I'm glad he did because he's fighting the same fight I am from a completely different angle. If you get something out of this, hit like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Let's get into it. Hey, Sean, again, thanks for coming on. So I want to start this off because it's very interesting to me, and I'm sure a lot of people ought to know about this about you who know you. So you were undercover narcotics, then you helped prosecute cases, then became an Army ER doctor. That's not exactly a trend or a line most people go upon. How did that go for you? How did that happen?
Yeah. So what I really think happened is I was a young kid and I just loved problem shooting, and I noticed I liked solving problems, and it provided me a sense of fulfillment. Even as a toddler, self-satisfaction, figuring out solutions on my own, and so I ended up using that a lot where I worked. It allowed me to have a work ethic where I just rose to the top in every kind of work situation that I was in. I was intentional to become the best employee, best soccer player, whatever organization I had to be in. So when I got into college, I went into law enforcement. So I worked as a uniformed police officer while I was in college to get my college education, and I loved it. It was probably the most fun job I ever had, working in law enforcement as a police officer. And then I had an opportunity. I got interested in becoming a detective and an investigator, drug agent. So I got to do undercover work at an extremely young age. I'd actually done some undercover work in college at the age of 19. Very interesting that, early opportunity in my life. And I enjoyed the experience of pretending to be somebody who I wasn't. It was kind of like acting, only my life was at stake in doing it.
A little bit on the table there.
Yeah, it's a big incentive. So, I learned to be a supremely good actor and learned a lot about human traits. So I got involved in doing also undercover narcotics work, and, crazy experiences where knives and guns were held up to my head and middle of force and stuff. And you have to really think your way out of those kind of solutions. And those are the kind of challenges I didn't enjoy, but afterwards I enjoyed how I was able to problem solve that. So from undercover, law enforcement, police work, undercover narcotics work, working in organized crime, even had a little tour of a arson investigation. I found that very interesting. Then I evolved going on to law school and became a criminal prosecutor. And I really enjoyed, the public servant aspect to that.
Yeah.
Prosecuting individuals that really worked very selfishly for their own interests and broke laws, helping society out with criminally prosecuting those people. But I became challenged by the ethical application of the criminal justice system, I found that people that were connected to people largely through political contributions, I was being pressured to give a more favorable deal to than the lonely poor kid, boy or girl, or sometimes it was an older person
So it just
that
kind of
didn't have any money.
bothered you too much, right?
Yeah, so I was troubled about that, and I wanted to just do the right thing professionally to help society. So I lost my GM for criminal prosecution, and I returned to an interest that I had, science and medicine, as a child. And I realized, having gone through law school, that what I previously felt about myself going to medical school earlier while I was in college, taking more science classes and heading towards a curriculum in medical science, that I felt like then I wasn't intelligent enough, but having gone through law school and functioned as
Proved it to
undercover
yourself.
drug agent, I felt like I could go to medical school. So I did, and I absolutely, I loved my first lecture in medical school. To this day, I still remember that very first lecture. And I really enjoy now serving humanity in this particular space where I help people become the healthiest versions of themselves, and more precisely, the best biological versions of themselves. Because I think health, from a conventional standpoint, doesn't really adequately capture what somebody is from a biologically optimized state.
No,
I don't think conventional health can do that.
No, we've talked about this before we even got on this podcast. Like the standardization that we hold in our medical practice in today's society is reactionary, not preventative in any sense. We're very good at acute injuries, but preventative medicine, pain management, all this stuff, we lack big time on.
And it's that way, even while I was on active duty in the military, caring for President Clinton, Vice President Cheney, Secretary of State Colin Powell, and Condoleezza Rice, that it's all reactionary. No, there's not a effort to try to prevent problems, much less trying to optimize. Even the most important people in the world aren't taking advantage of this capability. Now, I think there have been some steps since my time working in that capacity, especially with this current administration, that it seems like the medical care that's around the senior executive service, the president, vice president, and members of the cabinet, are much better than where they were before with regard to trying to prevent problems. But I still think that they don't really have anywhere close to an idea about how you could biologically optimize the most important people.
And I think, taking just that level of person out of it. I believe in our conversation, you said something about, doctors as a whole don't have the education or the training to even work in that realm when we're talking about longevity or preventative.
They don't look at themselves, Zach. The fact that physicians, it's remarkable, to me. You wouldn't go to a dentist to have dental care that had gross, brown, disgusting, horrific dentition. And yet you go to this doctor and he or she, you take advice to them on how they should be healthy. They're overweight. They have to swing their arms to get out of a chair. They become short of breath walking down a hallway or upstairs. They're patently unhealthy. And yet we're taking advice from them about taking medicines and lifestyle.
I've never heard that analogy, but I'm going to use that going forward about the dentist. That is about as perfect as you can put it. And then, it's amazing. We'll talk about visceral fat here because that's a lot of what you work around. But, you ask them the simple terms like, hey, doctor, what's your VO2 max? What's your ApoB? Like, you ask them some of these things that, they probably should know from a health perspective, and they probably know what you're talking about. And it's amazing that.
They're not even interested, Zach. I think even though they should know these things, they not only not know it, but they would actively push away and think of their particular approach and their knowledge base as not only sufficient but superior, and they would dismiss whatever you or others, myself, would be doing in the realm to actually optimize a human being would be something that they would think was crazy and likely just woo woo. They they're completely blind to the fact that they're falling apart too. And that was me before I became somebody who was intentional about choices that I do on a daily basis to optimize my health. I was that overweight, patently fat ER doctor who had eczema, erectile dysfunction, reliant on basic pharmaceutical drugs to try to have marital relations with my wife. I was a father of 5 as a miracle that even happened. And I also had restless leg syndrome, sleep apnea. I had metaplastic changes within my esophagus with precancerous lesions on biopsies from severe gastroesophageal reflux disease. I was waking up 5 times a night to pee. I couldn't sleep. And I was the 48-year-old who would go to the bathroom every time and hit the toilet paper roll for a gigantic wad of toilet paper that I would have to strategically place between my body and my underwear to catch the urine that would continue to dribble out. And I was only 48. So yeah, that guy was a doctor and he was just going through the motions. I was taking all the medicines. I was doing everything they were telling me to do. Then I meet a human being who is a young man, supremely healthy. And I just said to him, I wish I was as lean as you or as thin as you instead of being a fat guy. And he said, you can. And you just got to stop, eating processed foods, do the paleo diet, and eat fermented foods. And sprint. He said those things to me. I think I was the only human being that was fat and diseased and had those things said to them that actually did them. And so I did it to lose weight. I lost weight, but 1 year later, this disease catches up to you, chronic disease. You don't see it. It's not like, oh, chronic disease hit me today. You're blind to this insidious development. And I will say to you, Zach, you're blind to the improvement. It slowly happens. And so you don't have this day where you wake up and say, oh, I was healed of this, or I'm even getting better. A lot of times it's masked. So I woke up. I didn't wake up. I had this realization one time, I still see it, in the bathroom peeing. And I realized my urinary stream is no longer dribble. It's a forceful stream like it used to be when I was a teenager. It was loud. It was masculine. It was vital, vigorous. And I realized I wasn't getting up anymore. And I didn't need these pills. And all these realizations were happening. And I got mad as Hades that had happened to me. And instead of saying, like, clapping my hands like, oh, this is wonderful, the reason why I was so upset is I was terrified the fact that I, as a physician, physician, gone to medical school, was completely ignorant of what really mattered. And then I was profoundly overwhelmed with a sense that, well, if I can be this overwhelmed and misled as a physician, who's going to help the average person ever figure this out? So that's why I went into research and left my position, specialty as an emergency medicine doctor and a concierge physician that I was doing, to become a full-time researcher. And I volunteered for 7 years, worked part-time for my family, and volunteered full-time 4 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. at night, and barely making any money part-time. But my passion was to try to get to America what was given to me, understand it, not just make it come off as woo-woo medicine.
What's not going to come off as same?
Why did it matter?
Right. And for someone who's in your position, who I think we obviously, as a society, put doctors, I would say, on a pedestal. Like, we trust it, most of what they come out of their mouth because they're trained. They're supposed to be a caring nature, and so when it comes from you too, it's more powerful. I would expect more people to do that. So when we're talking about that, if a guy comes, he gets his blood work back, everything's in his range, but he's still feeling bad. He's still not feeling like himself. He's having maybe some of the symptomatic symptoms that you are occurring. What would you say to him? Like, what's maybe actually going on there?
Yeah. So, people, the labs oftentimes end up being lagging indicators to disease that's way upstream of all that. And they may be aware I was that, urine was dribbling out of me, and, I'd made some adjustments with the toilet paper. That's not a very effective, certainly doesn't prevent it, but it's reactive. But what's happening to these individuals is the accumulation of chronic disease. And so in the cascade of events, I think the very first thing that goes wrong is lifestyle and diet affecting our microbiome. Our microbiome becomes suboptimal, or the technical term we use for this in the research realm is dysbiotic. Mm-hmm. And so you have a diseased microbiome, not a good one, and it leads to disease within the body. Visceral fat is probably the single earliest expression of disease, things going wrong in your body. And this inflammatory fat starts seeding and filling the abdomen of even children. And then it includes other areas of ectopic fat, fat around the heart, and fat expressed within the muscles. And literally, bodybuilders included, people's muscles start filling with this inflammatory fat that's diseased, destroying their muscle. And it's delayed in bodybuilders because they have more muscle, so it's put off a little bit longer. But it's happening unless you get an MRI to see this expression of this disease. So I would tell that man or woman that is experiencing some changes in their labs to get out way upstream of just what they think might be happening and look at these areas of ectopic structural disease. And I use that term now, Zach, because people think of visceral fat, they have a perception that somehow it's what your body makes. No, your body is making an area of disease. That's what's happening. So sometimes people, and I gasp when they say this, how much visceral fat do I want to have? And I usually respond, well, how much cancer do you want to have?
Oh, that's a good way to get them paying attention, I would say that.
Yeah.
What about, go ahead.
It's important how you understand that it is actually disease and not something like muscle or your heart or something that the good Lord has put in your body to serve you. Visceral fat is a consequence of a poor lifestyle from a man or woman that hasn't yet learned what they should be doing on a daily basis,
right? And
collectively to improve.
That happens now all the time, where we get stuck in a loop. I talk about it all the time, where we're getting this loop, and whether it's painful or not, we'll stay in that loop because that's what we know. We don't like change. And then when we look at that blood work, we say normal. Like, that's usually, hey, your blood work's normal. But what does that actually mean? Like, who decided the normal in this?
Yeah, it's so great question. I think, that's a problem right from the get-go. You've identified just how you use that term normal. So the normal really is based on a numerical, mathematical average of a diseased population. So those two things is it's an average number. It's not an optimal number. And it's also based on large numbers of individuals feeding that data interpretation who are themselves diseased. So do you want to be like an average disease person? Then you could follow that number. But if you want to get above that and you ascribe and want to otherwise pursue a better life that actually is improving, then those numbers are not going to help you out.
No, not at all. And I would say, you were talking about normal, if you put your numbers when you were talking about how you were at 48, I would bet you most of your numbers were normal or were in range.
They were remarkably normal. In fact, I was doing all the things to reduce my cholesterol, my LDL, if you think that's important. Back then, I thought it was. And so my labs were completely normal. From every perspective that you could test, I was normal, except I had very profound chronic disease already at the age of 48. Histologically, when they did slides, you could see precancerous lesions developing within my esophagus, which preludes getting esophageal cancer, which has one of the highest mortality rates associated with. So if you follow the labs, I was normal, but disease was progressing. So just a model of following labs is not going to
No.
detect, particularly the labs that most physicians
Right, which are
testing are being employed.
Basic panels were 18 to 24 markers that are there. That doesn't go deep at all. Speaking, like, let's talk about the scans. Like, let's just start off with what surprises your fittest guys when they get that first scan?
Yeah, so I'll show you what surprises them. It's this. So here's one of my most fittest guys, an active duty second lieutenant, U.S. Army. Look, he's squared away now. He's Natty Guard, National Guard. So look, he's out of regs. He's got a beard, before he goes to report to drill. But this is him, and he looks shredded. So everybody thinks, this guy's going to be super, super healthy. Look at all of this white stuff in here. That is structural disease that this 28-year-old is filled with visceral fat when he looks this good. So the reality is you cannot see disease inside your body. You have to see it on the inside. So this guy is obese. He's just invisibly obese. You can't see it. So for the average person, and I'll say this to every person that's come to me, I have this line that I use. The MRI ends the lie. You're not as healthy as you think. You've got this invisible disease inside of you. So it's a great tool, a great modality and technology to guide individuals like yourself who use natural strategies. It gives them the ability to track this in a new way. And, to use the analogy I have that I give to my clients that come and work with me, executives mostly, it's like key performance indicators in a company or an organization.
Yeah, KPIs, right? So, and I think
KPI.
Right. And so talking about a KPI, what does that visceral fat number tell you against the other ones, like cholesterol or your A1C? What, helps make that more?
Cholesterol is first of all, the big distinguisher is visceral fat tells you 100% disease with a 100% signal and zero confounding. Cholesterol, on the other hand, has the lowest signal to noise ratio as a metric that you can follow. So you can raise cholesterol, lower cholesterol. I mean, you can lower it just by eating ice cream.
Yes.
So you got all these potential impacts on that particular number. Same thing with blood sugar. And I tell people you'd have to be a supercomputer to try to capture all the confounding influences in serum level markers that could change because of the dynamic nature that these serum levels represent within the body. But structural disease are not serum markers. They're not molecules floating around. The structural disease is static. It only changes slowly over a period of time as you apply different strategies. So free of confounding, that means that whatever you do to eliminate that structural disease is beneficial to the human body. And whatever you do that increases that disease is harmful to the human body. So it gives 100% clarity, Zach, on what you should be doing and evaluating how you are executing strategies. So, there's doing things, but there's also how you do those things. That's where a coach comes in. A coach can tell you to do a layup, but a coach can also tell you how well you're doing that layup or how poorly you're doing that layup. And so it's more than just a quantity. It's also the quality of what we do.
Yes.
And it's also not just a quantity of a metric, but also the quality of that metric. So for instance, when it comes to visceral fat, you can actually detect the degree of inflammation in that visceral fat based on the qualitative analysis of it. So I look at fat more than just the amount of fat. I also now look at it from the quality of that fat, and then also, most importantly, from the influence of it. So you can have a lot of visceral fat and have very little disease because you recently put it on and it hasn't yet influenced the development of chronic disease. and also the opposite. You can have a lot of disease, and having lost a lot of visceral fat, you suddenly lose it. You still have expressions of disease that have to gradually go away. But in my experience, humbly, humility aside, I have the most experience in the world doing this full time with MRIs, 13 years. And what I see when people get rid of their visceral fat is they begin optimizing their body in extraordinary ways that defy their age. So the capacity for a human being is older, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and in their 90s. I have clients in their 90s. They continue to improve provided they're getting rid of visceral fat. Their body starts improving.
Right. And so remarkable. I want to take it back and kind of sum this up with you're talking about the coach helping to show you how to do the layup correctly. Because I would imagine if we talk to the 48-year-old doctor, if somebody came to you with cholesterol, blood pressure, stuff like that, you're prescribing statins, you're doing that. You're not saying, hey, let's take a look at your nutrition, let's talk about your fitness. That's stuff that's missing in today's world. Like there's no prescription of, hey, I need you to work out a couple times a week. Hey, I need you to walk this many. Hey, your nutrition needs to be this. No, here's a statin, take it. What is your thoughts on that and how we attack it? Because what you're saying is exactly what I believe in, but in society we don't believe in it.
Yeah, well, it's back to your pedestal observation about physicians. That we have put physicians on this pedestal, which gives them sole authority and credibility to speak to us about our matters pertaining to our health and our body. And so because the society has developed and inculcated within us since our childhood, pay attention to doctors and not other people, we're dismissive of people that are coaches. So I will go so far as to say and admit online that I'm trying to create a different professional replacing physicians, because I think the conventional healthcare may be gone too far to recover and restore an ability to do this. They're too resistant. They're too arrogant to be able to turn around. And so I'm trying to develop professionals who are essentially like personal trainers or health coaches, and professionalizing them with the necessary skill sets to leverage existing technology that is available without medical licensure, and utilize natural strategies and optimize human beings way better than what a physician could do. So the problem remains that people will dismiss working with a health coach, even though they may have a credible track record, because they still continue to assign too much importance and authority in their physician, never mind the fact their teeth are falling out of their mouths and they look patently unhealthy.
Yeah, the bad dentist. So you, heart and muscle and fat, right? Not just the belly fat. The fat you were really talking about, that your belly fat, or your fat that's accumulating doesn't say with a visceral fat. For you, what point do you really want to stomp on with, hey, when we're looking at visceral fat, it's not something you can detect. This is why it's important. This is what it does. This is what it shows you. Because what we were talking about too is not just living to your 90s. Modern medicine is going to help keep us living longer, but quality of life to where you can do things you actually want to do. How does visceral fat help you get there?
Yeah, so I think it's a wake-up signal. I've noticed for 15 years, 13 years now that I've been doing it with an MRI, when I scan somebody, they either get very angry, they get very emotional. A lot of them will cry. If I'd say most of them cry, most of my clients will cry. And I've even had some people pass out when they see the disease inside of them. They're confronted with the reality that they've lived a fraudulent life, imagining that everything is okay. And so this is visceral fat that's elevated in this guy, and his muscles are filled with this fat in his oblique muscles in his abdomen. And he has enormous love handles hanging above his butt and off the back of his back. And these are his legs that look like Wagyu beef.
They do.
Human Wagyu, versus an Olympic sprinter who doesn't eat processed foods, who's incredibly healthy, who has the most big and beautiful muscles I have ever seen. That's his core, about 4 times bigger than his vertebral body, compared to this guy's vertebral body and his core roughly the same size. And this guy's a couch potato, has to swing his arms to get out of a couch. This guy sets, on the verge of setting world records for sprinting. So lifestyle goes to the white stuff that you have inside of you. So, I get people to get scanned. I show them this. It becomes a very powerful signal to their brains in a primitive area of their brain. And we've got to make, and this is the difference, we've got to make a transition, Zach, where people stop relying on their doctors to interpret signal and they rely on their own brains to interpret signal. Because when you interpret that signal, information in front of you correctly, then you can change your life. But you are really at a disadvantage trying to apply signal that's interpreted by another human being, like a doctor, and ever expect your life. And this is why virtually to every man or woman who goes to conventional healthcare over 40 or 50 years ends up in a more profoundly diseased state than they ever were when they started.
And
but
medicated.
The man or woman who finds good signal, they actually improve. My clients and myself, and I'm sure you've had this experience as well, that the more you live better, the better you perform, the better you look, the better you execute, the better you are. But you have to understand reading information, that signal. And so labs are a start, but I think dusting labs far more effective is this fat within the abdomen and also around the heart and the muscles. But I will say this, Zach, and I think you should be aware of this. It's also the appearance of faces. So look at how this guy's face improved by eliminating his visceral fat. His wife's face improved by eliminating her visceral fat. Her abdomen improved, eliminating her visceral fat. And this guy's face, a huge chunk of fat around his heart, and how much he reduced that, and how much his face improved, and also visceral fat, how much his face. So faces improved. So here's the future. You can actually, I think, improve people's health way better through looking at changes in face, the body, their performance, external markers that we're just learning about that AI will help to collate, put together, and analyze. But right now, visceral fat MRIs.
And that's what you're talking about too, is it's when I talk to clients, usually they come in something like have better abs or something. But what you talked about earlier is very rarely do they ever talk about that. They always talk about how much better they feel, the return that they get on the professional side, as well as what they get as at home, and how they improve their life, quality of life overall by doing these steps that you're talking about and improving their health. I assume you see the same with your clients, and
very much so.
And it's amazing to see.
Here's what I will say as somebody who's probably seen that more than anybody else in my experience as a health optimizing physician in this space and doing MRIs and actually studying it, that the greatest hope I have, Zach, for society doesn't reside within conventional health or government or professional sports. It resides within corporate America. Why? Because here's my prediction. The minute corporate America as an entity, a practice, a profession, understands that they have this enormous exploitable advantage that they're not exploiting in the form of human performance optimization that's readily achievable and available, not being used, and they simply help their employees become more healthy and start exploiting that their bottom line dramatically goes up. Then they will embrace and endorse this. They will save our species. But right now, corporate America doesn't know anything about this. So I want to go out to, corporate shows, leadership programs, getting in front of corporate leadership and let them know. But I've taken care of numerous corporate executives. They are blown away
when they realize how much better they perform.
Oh, yeah.
And now they want it for their employees.
I talk about it all the time with them. There's a diminishing returns at some point. When your health gets to a point, how many times are you just so overly tired, you read an email like, oh man, I don't remember what I just read, and you have to reread it again. Like, it sounds simple, but you continue to do that over day-to-day functionality. And if you can improve that 25%, that bottom dollar that improves for the company, exponential, right? And that's a key point you make there.
It's the largest cost to a self-insured company, which is usually a company of around 4,000 employees or more. The largest cost is healthcare. And the largest cost for even smaller companies, outside of salaries and wages and benefits, is again healthcare. So it's an incredible expense that they just kind of pay along. But I have an ability and theory that that's going to dramatically improve. I'm confident as soon as corporate America understands and we begin influence. You and I are working in this space with just individually working on executives on an individual one-to-one basis. But the future, Zach, is going to be taking effective strategies, tracking them against correct KPI, which I call in this space key biological indicators instead of a corporate KPI, and leveraging that impact it's going to have on corporate KPI. You're going to move the bottom line dial way more effectively than any change of machinery or distribution or product enhancement could continue, at least until AI takes over and replaces our workforce. It's going to be
if you're looking at it from that perspective, you need less people if you have people performing better. So it's a bottom dollar increase there as well.
100%.
So as we're going to close out here, I like to do rapid fire. It's short questions, first answer that comes to your mind. Don't try to overthink it. Are you ready?
Sure. Let's do it.
All right. Number one, if a man could only measure one thing about his body, how would you have him measure his visceral fat?
I would do an MRI for them to visually see it without exposure to radiation in a safe environment, just using magnetic fields. And they can repeat that as frequently as they like. We did it for the National Science Foundation once a day. So MRI, visceral fat, and heart fat around the heart.
Okay. Skinny fat. What's the biggest myth about being thin and healthy at the same time?
The biggest myth is that you're failing to appreciate the invisible disease and you're simply not capturing it. So an MRI helps you overcome that lie. You're not as healthy as you think. And while leanness is oftentimes associated with health, it's a ratio of healthy tissue to disease. And without the MRI, you don't know what that ratio is.
Right. What about the scale? In one line, why is the bathroom scale lying to a 45-year-old man right now?
Because they're tracking numbers. There's an adage in medicine, treat the patient, not the number. But when you just simply use a bathroom scale, even something that is what's called a smart scale,
correct,
like bioimpedance, where you step on it and does mild electrical current through your body, it really doesn't give you an ability to tell the difference between healthy tissue and disease. So, the there's superficial subcutaneous fat and there's deep subcutaneous fat. And one is super healthy and protects you. The other one is disease. And a bioimpedance scale is just a number and doesn't allow you to interpret health from disease. And so it's almost completely meaningless. It is archaic. You want to I tell people, spend money, be luxurious when it comes to your health, Zach, and be frugal when it comes to everything else.
Well, time is finite for all of us, right? So if you don't try to take care of that time, it's going to get you in the end. All right, this one I'm interested in hearing you. Sprint or lift? If a client could only do one of those a year, which one would you recommend?
I would say sprint because I will tell you this as somebody who's a professional in this space. The level of physical exertion that I get my clients to is profound respiratory distress, dyspnea. So I want them gasping for air. Why? Because when we study this for the National Science Foundation, that's what we see animals in the wild doing.
the chase to catch an antelope, or an antelope, the sprint to get away, the fight in the end, and between animals, conflict, prey and predator. They're gasping for air, and it optimizes the human being way more. Bodybuilders have done a huge service to help out our country and our species, but they don't get short of breath enough, and they work out too much. Increase the intensity, big guys, and don't do it so much.
No, you and I we had a conversation when we were linking up for the podcast. We're both big believers in sprints, so I wanted to ask that. The 2004 award that you got, what were you doing in the Army where they named you the top physician that year?
So at the time, I was chief of emergency medicine and the largest Army hospital in Asia. And I'd invented a lot of medical devices, patents that were very clever, and did a lot of initiatives. They called me a white tornado. And so they gave me the U.S. Army Surgeon General's Physician Distinction Award. So I was the best doctor that year in the U.S. Army. So it was quite an honor to achieve, to get that. I was the first ER doctor. Normally, it's like surgeons, they get that kind of award that do all these really innovative things. But I did it within the realm of emergency medicine without having to operate on people, and it was quite an honor to receive.
Very impressive as well. Undercover to ER. Was there anything that still serves you today that you picked up in your narcotics endeavor?
Yeah, I think, great question. I learned a lot about humanity, reading people in extreme situations was really important. So I found that it was a useful skill set to work in undercover work, understand humanity, to be able to function in a high stressful situation like emergency medicine, where we're making critical life and death decisions in acute situations. So a lot of analogy, and it was very useful training.
Yeah, that emotional IQ, we often don't give it what it deserves. And I imagine the emotional IQ you needed in those situations was quite high.
Right. Well, I'm sure you do it too, Zach, and take care for your clients. So, your ability to have that impact. If you cannot reach people and effectively influence them, then you fail in getting them to achieve the better life that's available to them. So it's available to you, and I'm sure you use it based on your experiences in the past that you've collectively brought together in your life.
I try to. I would definitely say that when you can come from a place of humility too, it definitely helps. And that's kind of what you were talking about earlier, being that 48-year-old who needed the change. Once you changed, the humility inside you gave you a different passion. And that's kind of where I lie as well. The heart fat surprise. What's the most dangerous scan you've ever seen a person who looked fine?
I would say the most dangerous scan is a large amount of fat around their heart that shows up. And like this individual here that had such a huge, individuals that come in like that, because it's probably the most acutely deadly fat that you can have, because heart attacks and strokes are probably your most experienced level of lethality that you're going to get from a disease standpoint. It kills more human beings. And then collectively over the years, over a lifetime, it's going to be visceral fat. So the first thing, I pretend like I'm back taking care of, President Clinton or, Vice President Cheney, is to threat mitigate. So I show them that. And the other interesting thing, Zach, is what I show people in addition to that, believe it or not, is this one marker that really gets people to pay attention and to grow up and make changes in their life, is this fat that people have around their rectum. And so in MRI scans, you can also see this fat in people's rectum because it shows up. So this is the rectum. These are the femoral heads. And look at all this inflammatory fat around their rectum and fat in their butt. I'm like, this is you in diapers. If you do not get rid of this fat around your rectum, it's just going to slide right out. It's not just going to be passing gas flatus, a yoga fart. If you're some soccer mom, doing a yoga class, it's going to go way past that. But wake up. This is what's going on.
Okay. That's That's an approach that I don't think most people would even consider. But
No.
what the return on value there is something that no one wants to be in that position.
No, I
No
mean,
one.
no bright person. I mean, imagine what the life of a human being that says, "Oh, I don't care. I'll just wear diapers when that comes to it." But
Yeah.
most people are shocked. They get the fat around their heart and the fat around the rectum. Get them to leave that day with me, and also the fat in their glutes. I mean, can you imagine seeing that kind of disease in your glutes? And
Right.
you know how important those are.
Right.
But then I show it to somebody. Even the average person possesses the requisite knowledge that, hey, my butt is important to me to get me out of a chair and out of cars and to be able to walk.
Yes. Speaking of Cheney or Clinton, without breaking confidence, what did caring for someone at that level teach you about health?
So I think just spending time with these individuals that function, whether they both, different political parties, Democrat, Republican, they both were high performers and function. They just had different political perspectives. But what I saw in them that they did really important things. They served our country, and an awareness of their importance allowed me to appreciate that I want to do a better job in providing medical care to them. Now, honestly, at that time, I really was in a reactive model, ready for a heart attack, for Dick Cheney, gunshot, something like that, and President Clinton. But the importance of trying to improve them was lost on me. Today, I look back at those people, and now I'm caring for like members of the president's cabinet, heads of state, people I can't talk about. I pine, I yearn to optimize their biology to better serve humanity, to better serve people, and corporations, leaders to be more effective, to help grow commerce and in the service to humanity. So that's my motivation. Having worked at these people that are high performers, is trying to get other people to be high performing and better influencers. If I was to reduce it, I put it this way: it's to help people that are doing great things be able to be better influencers, to get other people to do great things.
That's the easiest way to do it because people will follow. So your book title, Growing Better, Not Older. What's one line that captures what you mean by that?
I would say it's the notion that to challenge somebody to think that as they get more birthday candles on their birthday cake, that they actually could improve. And an example of that is my fervent belief is the very best professional athletes, Zach, in the future, in the NFL, playing soccer, tennis, are not going to be athletes in their 20s and 30s. It's going to be men and women in their 60s and 70s. And the reason is when they find out about these biomarkers that really matter, visceral fat, they will eliminate the accumulation of chronic disease. They will have a level of health that not only is on equal par to a 20-year-old, but better. Why? Because you teach men and women who come to you, Zach, how to get healthier. And you could take a 20-year-old and get them even more healthy with that kind of insight. And we're going to eliminate disease, and we're going to give them 50, 30, 40, 50 more years experience playing that sport on a healthy body. That's the future.
Right. And
so
we can
grow
see it
better, not older.
We can see it now, right, with certain athletes. We have athletes that are pushing into their 40s now, where that was a thing of the past.
Yep. Yeah, Mille.
Messi's about to hit 40, right?
Yeah.
They're all we're in LeBron James, and you talk about Tom Brady. Obviously, some outliers there, but we see the trend.
That's too often. Good observation. It's coming.
Too often we go, oh, that's just part of getting older, right? That's an inaccurate statement. That's
why I wrote that book.
Right. All right. And let's end it on this. Your own body. What's the one thing you do every single day for your own visceral fat?
I never put anything in here that I don't know optimizes my body, that I think even may harm myself. You might think that's a restrictive diet. Dude, you have no idea the freedom I have. There's no restriction in my life. I'm 60 years old. I can climb a tree like an 8-year-old. I'm playing soccer at the age of 63. I do all these exceptional things. I can jump up and do 20 pull-ups at the age of 63. It's extraordinary what I'm able to achieve. Do not tell me I have a restricted diet. I have a diet guided by an intentionality where I know what I eat, how I live, influences the circumstances and how much I get to enjoy life. So I have a very strong and passionate response to that.
I love that because in our original conversation, I have something with myself that I tell my kids, I said, hey, I'm gonna beat you and grandkids in a dead ass sprint at 70 years old, and I mean it. I mean it with all my heart. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. But I can still out sprint my 16-year-old. And he says, Dad, never tell. And he's a skinny soccer player for his high school. He says, Dad, never tell my friends that you can out sprint me.
That's amazing. I do the same with my 17-year-old. So I understand that. Well, hey, this was amazing. Like everything you're putting out there is stuff I 100% agree with. And I think you can put a change in the actual world. So again, thank you for coming on the show. And we really appreciate it.
Well, Zach, thank you for the opportunity to come and share these concepts with you. Keep doing awesome things. I love seeing professionals like yourself, and you're supplanting, you're outperforming medical professionals that continue just the status quo and people falling apart. So we need more people doing exactly what you're doing, Zach. So thank you for the opportunity to come here and be on the show.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Dr. Sean O'Mara, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. This was a conversation that I wanted to have. And here's what I want you to take from this. The number on your scale and the word normal on your lab report are not the same thing as being healthy. And they are nowhere close to the same thing as performing. There's fat around you cannot see, around your organs, around your heart, inside your muscle. And it's telling a truer story about your future than your cholesterol is. You can measure it and you can shrink it without a prescription. With work you're fully capable of doing. This one's for the man who's over 40, who's driven, who's done everything he was told and still feels the floor shifting underneath him. You're not broken. You're not just aging. You've been measured with the wrong ruler by a system that's playing a different sport than you are. Go get the right measurement, then do the work. If this hits home, rate and review the show. 5 stars if we earned it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and subscribe on YouTube so the next one finds you. It's the best way to help another guy stop settling for normal. I'm Zach Armstrong. No hype, just standards.